I'm Jeremy Vance, and this is the FAQing Security Podcast. All right, so welcome everybody back to the FAQing Security Podcast. I don't say FAQing because I'm not sure if it gets cut off or not. I'm Jeremy. I actually have a guest with me today. This is Zach. So Zach helps me with all of our API stuff and IT-related items. So today we want to be talking about API and specifically how we can use the API for security systems and what's involved with getting it and how secure it is, that kind of stuff. So I've put together a few questions for you kind of today. So the first one, just nice, really easy, clean. What is an API? If you had to explain it to somebody who has no idea, pretend I have no idea.
So an API is an application programming interface, basically how one program talks to another. Can range from anything from interacting with a another website, web service, or an actual app on your PC.
Nice. Okay, cool. Now, so the ones we've used in the past, where we're going from a third party user management software through to a security system, and we're dumping users and their credentials in. That's the one probably I'm most familiar with. What are a couple other applications, things people would use it for, that just to give people an idea?
Well, APIs range from anything. Even Bluetooth is considered an API. You have to have a program that interacts with it, so it can vary a lot. For the case of taking it from a user management system to a program, you have two APIs that you're talking to. So you'd probably have a middleman that would which would be your app, that would interact with that API to another API. So it's basically translating it.
Gotcha. And then so when people say things like REST or RESTful, what is that? What are they talking about?
So RESTful falls under the web APIs. It's just a type of transport and how it communicates. It's a method of an API. So RESTful basically falls under request. Oh, I forgot the whole thing.
It actually stands for something.
It does stand for something.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that. I thought it was just a name.
HTTP has two main, it has a lot. So there's get, fetch, post, put. So there's a lot of ways to interact with a website and tell it what to do.
Now, because we're dealing in security systems, so this is question number 2.
Yeah.
How secure is an actual API?
Definitely falls under what is hosting that interface, that API. So obviously everything should have a firewall. Make sure it's to the lowest it can be.
Lowest meaning in the most secure?
The most secure. So try and have very few...
no permissions. Start
with what you actually need. Don't just allow it to access anything. In REST, it could be just firewalls on all the ports except your API one. So you could have an API separate from the main program.
Okay.
And then it talks locally to that system. Another one is that authentication should always be there. There's methods of authentication over REST. The most popular one being sessions and tokens.
Okay.
Either in the headers or sometimes I've seen them in the body of the content.
Okay.
A lot of it falls under HTTPS as well. So you need to make sure that if you're using a REST API, it should be through HTTPS, more secure.
Yep.
Encoded, etc. There's so much. It falls under a lot of just make sure you have the security there, your system secured as well. The API is a trustworthy one, so if you're accessing someone else's API, that wouldn't exactly fall on you, but you should make sure it's still secure in how you're talking to it.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. How did you actually learn this stuff? How'd you get into this?
Well, APIs are actually the most common to start with learning programming.
Okay.
Because when you have a project, you typically have an idea and it's interacting with, I don't know, YouTube's API to fetch videos, titles, and descriptions. There's a lot, everything has an API these days. Some being paid, some being free.
Yeah, there you go. Now I do know. I was just thinking about it on like an integrator for a security integrator side. I'm pretty sure that using the API is probably how you have to go from like, let's say you have like a ANPR, like a license plate rego reading camera,
Yeah.
and then you have like a protege or an integrity. I think you actually need to write the software for the APIs to talk to actually get that to work in between as well.
Yeah,
too.
so that's where that like your app would be in between it to talk with both APIs.
So where would you actually host your app? Assuming so you're making the middleman software
Yeah.
that is connecting the two APIs from the two different products. Where does that get hosted?
Well, it ranges from where you need to host it. You need to look at your environment that you're working with. If they're both web-based APIs that you're talking between, then you could just have it on your own server.
Okay.
Whereas if it's like one of the APIs was actually only accessible being on that system, you'd probably host it on that and then just talk out to the other API that's web-based.
Okay. Yeah. So it could be on one side, but talk
Yeah.
to both. All right.
And then if it's a case of both of them are only accessible by having the software on both, you'd probably make you'd probably make three. So one's for that API, one's for the other, and then it turns it into a web-based to a server that you can access
like
between
a control server.
Yeah, so you'd have three applications then that you manage.
All right.
Bit more technical and finicky.
Yeah.
It depends.
More moving parts, right?
Depends on the situation. Like that would probably be the most extreme one.
Okay. Nice. Awesome. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, somebody's watching this or listening to this and they go, actually, I need to do that. I need to have my, I know that my accounting software has an API and I want to go to this other software that we use that also has an API. How would they go about getting somebody to help them with that?
Yeah, it depends on the environment, like what the API requires. It can be very technical at times. Documentation, if there's an API, it would always have a documentation, unless it was, some apps don't bother with it. Leave you to figure it out.
They're like, figure it out.
Yeah, so that's extreme cases. If they actually say they have an API, there would be documentation for it most often.
Perfect.
From there, you would be able to see a get started on how to interact with it. Most often than not, it would be programming involved. So you need to have some experience with that.
So in essence, really, it is if you step one, check to see if the programs you're wanting to use with the wherever you buy them from have an API.
Yeah.
Step two, see if there's documentation, possibly even an existing API like program that you can use in between.
Yeah.
And then step three is if that doesn't exist, you take that information to somebody that writes them, like yourself, and then they can create the software, the middleman software to get those APIs to talk together.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, perfect. I think we understand that.
And GitHub's an amazing source of just people working on random APIs as well.
Go ahead. So explain again, because I'm going to bet you most people listening to this don't actually know what GitHub is. So what is GitHub?
GitHub's it's basically a social media platform for a lot of code repositories. It's like a library of just projects.
It's like Pinterest for coders.
Exactly. And it's just, you can just share what you want. It's open source, so anything you publish on there, you can have private repositories, which is just for yourself or your team to access, people you invite. But it's just fun to browse if you have around on public repositories, if you have some coding experience or want to get into it.
My understanding is it can be used kind of like as a poor man's copywriting system as well too. Like you can say look, I posted the source code on GitHub on this date, which is before this other person worked on it.
The word Git actually comes from Linus Torvalds. He made the Git.
Okay, I didn't know
that. It's actually a program which is to manage version history of programming. And then GitHub is the hub of
the actual interface for it. Because GUI's not such a fun word anymore, is it, right? Nobody uses that anymore.
Well, GitHub is the company, Git is the app.
Gotcha. There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything API that people should know that we haven't talked about?
Basically, anything you do on your phone would be talking to an API.
Okay.
Of some sort. Yeah. It's everywhere. Just browsing the web. In the background on the website, it talks to it's probably its own API, but it might be talking to some others. It's everywhere.
So it's predominant. Like
it's just everywhere.
Everywhere.
If you access the internet, you're talking to a form of an API.
Yeah.
If it's for the website side of the API, so it's probably not a public one that you're talking to, but it'd probably be making like a request to the server every now and then. Like, I don't know, Facebook would be, to do a refresh, it'd be talking to its API to go fetch the new post that it hasn't loaded.
No, that's actually really cool.
Yeah,
so it's secretly working in the background.
It's everywhere. It's talking all the time.
Nice. That's excellent.
In the palm of your hands, on your phone.
Yeah, it's the one thing that we kind of talk about on the podcast all the time is how like humans are basically becoming cyborgs. Yeah. Right? Like you'd never, if you think of it, it's like your phone. You can't live without it.
Yeah.
It's literally a part of your body.
Everything in your pocket you need to access.
Yeah. Our last episode we talked about password managers, and you and I have talked about this before. Yeah. What is your preferred password manager?
My favorite is Bitwarden.
Bitwarden?
Yeah. I have a paid plan. It's very cheap.
Super. They're all decent.
They're all priced, pretty cheap, but I've tried LastPass before. They seem a little bit more expensive than Bitwarden.
Okay.
I think I pay like $12 a year.
Which is still, it's like $1 a month. Yeah.
It's like $1 a month, but just make sure you have a really long password for a password manager. And then just, have a different one for each in the password manager.
The other thing we talked about the last time we talked was you don't know all of your passwords. Like, I don't know any of my passwords.
I actually have no clue what any of my passwords are.
I know my password manager password.
That's mine as well.
So I'm not alone. This is the way.
Yeah. I do suggest having, like, the only concern I have is putting my two-factor authentication code.
Like in the password manager?
Which I can do. Like, I have it for some that I just don't really care about, but it enforces.
Yeah, but rather than using, like, Authenticator on your phone?
Yeah, like, I find it convenient because if I need to just quickly get that authentication code in, it just autofills it.
Yeah.
So it makes things really quick if it's in the password manager, but still always have, like, a separate device to try and grab or to look at your two-factor authentication, because then that is where the two-factor authentication comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, me and Nectarius, so I'll have Nectarius on the podcast probably in a few weeks or whatever, but we always talk about the future, and like, we've had the argument about drones taking over fighter pods, but we're always talking about the next step really is like a watch that is actually like sensing your DNA. And then it's your two-factor authentication, basically.
What's funny is, that there's I think it's Visa I don't know.
Oh, is there somebody doing that?
There's someone who has done, like, this palm scanning thing to be your card to make purchases. So
that's pretty good.
You hold your hand over it and it makes a purchase.
So there's this show I'm watching called Upload, which is a super cheesy, like, I think it's on Prime. Free plug. But it's like a super cheesy like show that's in the near future, and people die and their brains get turned into computers and they get uploaded to a virtual heaven and they live. But the way they do cell phones and everything in the future on this show is it's a watch, and they just go like this, and like the phone screen is like a virtual screen in there, and they can like take photos and do stuff like that.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, watches are getting like.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, now there's watches, which I know it sounds like counterintuitive, but there's watches that do all the health stuff, but they don't have a
screen
digital interface. Yeah, it all goes directly to your phone.
Yeah, well, that's like I was talking about it. I think I prefer the watch with a screen because that's how I use to know if a notification is like
you actually go like,
worth enough to get out my phone, whereas some people actually find it distracting, and then
I find it super distracting.
Only want the health things. So.
Well, even then, I actually don't want the distraction so much that I don't keep track of all my vitals on my watch, because I don't want to wear it because I find it distracting.
Yeah.
It's a tough one because
there's the rings as well. Like
the rings?
Yeah, there's rings of them. And then,
which are just...
like it's getting smaller and smaller for just health tracking. Soon you probably won't even need to wear anything.
Well, what's funny is they're getting smaller and smaller, but my phone is actually getting bigger every generation.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about... So there's this software called Ground Plan, which is for Simpro, which is one of the, like, in the service industry, it's like a project management software. And it's almost built for tablets. It's like, so where you want to have a tablet and you put the map of your site on the tablet, and then you can select like cameras and reads and things, and then you put it on the map, and then it actually converts that into a quote in Simpro using the API.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so it actually goes out from Grand Plan in the Simpro, creates the quote in Simpro, but you have to do it like you could do it from your phone, but your phone's like too small, and it's not even really made for a desktop. It's made for a tablet.
Well, that's the struggle. So when I'm creating websites, the most difficult part is always trying to make the mobile one, because you can't have, like, you have a design in mind or an app in mind, but sometimes it just doesn't always fit on a phone.
Yeah, I get that weird thing where you like it. There's like a sliver that's still left to the right of the phone screen, so you can actually scroll to the right.
Yeah.
I hate that.
It's actually a really tough one to try and avoid.
Yeah, and
on a website especially, because some things like a large image just force it to happen.
Yeah, and again, I only know how to work through WordPress.
Yeah.
Like not actually through HTML. So.
Yeah.
I'm literally limited to what it allows me to do.
Yeah.
So,
well, WordPress is amazing with their builder. They have their own integrated one built in, and it's just good. But
it's so good. Like
everything
honestly, it's
is
good.
like, even from programming, if you're making the website from scratch, it can be tricky sometimes to, like, using a builder that's restrictive. Then
yeah. Well, and it's meant to be like, so you don't screw it up, right?
Exactly.
For layman's. But then you have things like the in America, we're in Australia, even though I sound like an American. In America, the DOGE stuff that's all happening. I don't know if you say that or you pronounce it Doge or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But they made a bunch of websites using WordPress that were like easily hackable through like known like exploits.
So there's so many websites made with WordPress
yeah.
that it's a target for just trying to break into one WordPress version, like actually find a vulnerability in WordPress, then it can be replicated on every WordPress
exactly
host.
Yeah,
like,
and people, I'll tell you from experience, people don't update their WordPress as often as they should. Go update your WordPress.
At work, I'm like constantly hitting the update.
just
when I see it, I just log in every now and then. I'm like, there's updates available.
Mine actually does it automatically, and it sends me an email when it does it.
You should always have the auto update for both plugins and the actual WordPress
itself. Yeah.
If it's from a plugin within WordPress or having a cron job, which is an automated script on the server that's hosting WordPress, you can update it anyway.
Nice. Well,
it's always good to have it.
Yeah, always good to be. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that I had one where I have a client in Melbourne, and we were updating their software. So not WordPress, but this is for a security server software. And it took us a week of having to update it and roll it back and update it and roll it back because it was just constantly hitting these hangups. It's always that thing from an electronic point of view. Like, so if you look at like electronic security, our view is like, if it's not broken, don't touch it, right? But from an IT point of view, that's actually not good.
Yeah, in IT, you should always have a backup that you can replicate onto a new instance. So if something completely fails, you're able to rebuild it from scratch.
Now, when you do updates, so for people on smaller scales, this isn't really possible. But if you're doing an update on a larger server or like a VM, are you actually creating a second copy and then updating that, or are you just saving a backup to roll it back to? I don't know if you have anything that's so urgent.
Depends on what I'm updating. If it's a particular program on my server, I'd probably just take a backup. Like if I'm saying I'm updating my database on my server, I'd probably just take a copy of the database.
Just in case.
When it comes to my server, or if I'm doing something that might affect a lot of apps from this update, I actually take a snapshot of the OS.
Okay.
It allows me to roll back. It's just, there's server hosts, so I host my server through OVH.
Yep.
And I have another one with DigitalOcean. Both of them have snapshot capabilities. They can take a whole snapshot of the OS.
There you go.
And just like, if something bad goes wrong, you just roll it back
just
and it
in case,
runs back like normal. Obviously, there's downtime involved with that, so you just always got to be careful with what you're doing.
And pick your times.
Times.
Make sure if you do have clients, email the clients letting them know maintenance is happening.
That, and if it's something that's like, it needs to be running 24/7, that's when you'd probably look at having a fallback server.
Yeah, okay.
So you would have...
So you have like a offline one that you actually upgrade, and then you just switch the switch and you have take
pretty
the other
much.
one offline.
Or like you have a primary one that has more power, but if there's something that goes wrong, it falls back. For an app that I have the database hosted separately, so both of them can access that one. If something happens, then there's a server that's also on top of that talks to
Nice. There
the
we go.
computing ones, basically.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Neat.
So one's a web interface, the other two are computing, and then there's a database. So there's 4 there.
There you go. Nice. All right. I think that's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Nah, it was fun, right?
It was
It's
fun,
pretty. You just get here and talk.
Yeah.
And then you'll see it later.
Always interesting to see, for me, like infrastructure of like an app.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Like, there's some massive ones, especially when it comes to storage scale. Like the amount of servers involved with that is a lot.
Yeah. Well, Nectario's still in his future planning, like he's always looking for it. He still wants to make his app ID. I won't go into it now, because he'll get mad at me if somebody steals it. But he still wants to do that, so we'll have to have a chat about that at some point. That'll be a future project. Though.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Oh, I will let you go. Thank you for staying and talking IT nerdy stuff with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I mean, we had to come like a whole 30 seconds from where we were sitting to actually sit down and record. But yeah, no, that's perfect. All right, so to everybody else, if you do want to reach out to Zach, if you actually have something that you want an API built, or if you want a website built, or any sort of server application like that, I'll put his information for contacts in the show notes so you guys can reach out. You can also reach out directly through me or through ZTI, and we can get you in contact as well, too. You're happy with that?
Yep.
Cool. All right, excellent. Well, everybody, go forth and have a great day and stay safe. And we'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
See you, everyone.
I want to take a few seconds to say thank you to this episode's sponsor. This week, it's Ella Hall. Now, everybody knows how much I love local businesses and building stuff together, and specifically leaders and builders who personify positivity. And Ella does just that. We all know, whether running a business or getting on top of your personal life, you're constantly making decisions. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming, sometimes it's exhausting, and that's why I'm excited to share Ella with you. Now, I've known Ella for years. She's truly inspirational. She's an intuitive self-mastery coach and a pleasure expert who specializes in helping high-performing individuals, or those of you like me, learning to be high-performance individuals, unlock their inner wisdom and achieve magnetic success in business and life. Ella's Platinum Method helps you move from burnout to effortless abundance. She's been featured on SBS Insight TV, The Morning Show, Triple J, and a host of other Aussie media, proving that her message is something that people need to hear. It's funny, because if you would have asked me 15 years ago if I'd ever need coaching or want coaching, I would have literally just laughed at you. But the truth is, when we get to doing the hard stuff, sometimes we need someone to keep an eye on us and help us find the right path. Now, with everything going on in my life, having someone that can cut through all the noise and connect with me to find what I truly need to push forward is priceless. There's a reason why every top athlete has a coach. Now, Ella's offering a free 20-minute clarity breakthrough call valued at over $300 just for our listeners and viewers. I see you, YouTubers. Book your call today at ellahall.com.au. That's ELLAHALL.com.au. And mention that you heard about her from the podcast. And remember, when you support local businesses, you make Australia safer. When you support our sponsors, you allow me to make the show better. And we do that together.